I was just digging up what the Vancouver Canucks did last night as we bring in Jeff Paterson from RinkWide Vancouver. The visiting Canucks generated just enough offense to edge the Ducks 2-1 at the Honda Center. Nils Höglander and Connor Garland scored for the NHL's Western Conference leading Canucks. Okay, Jeff, let me be the 87 millionth person to ask you what the Vancouver Canucks need this week, if anything, leading up to Friday's trade deadline.
Yeah, I think, hey, Rod, good to be back on with you. First of all, I think they made their big splash with Elias Lindholm, the Calgary trade at the All-Star break. He has been underwhelming, to say the least. He's had a couple of moments here, but the hope is there's enough runway that he will find his game and find his role here. But right now he's slotted in as a third-line center. They gave up a lot to get a guy that is a third-line center. The hope was that he would bolster their top six. So I think they've made their big play. I think now you're looking at a depth defenseman, and I think Rick Tocchet has sort of sent out some warning shots to his fourth line. He wants a fourth line that's got some sort of identity. And right now, the guys that they've got on the fourth line, they don't score. They're not overly physical. They're certainly not intimidating. So I think you're going to look and see that the Vancouver Canucks, they know that they've come this far already with the roster that they've got. And it's been a pretty good season, obviously. So I don't think that you're looking to make a huge splash. And with just all this talk around a guy like Jake Guentzel, I think that there's going to be a bidding war, and I'm not sure that the Canucks have the assets necessarily to get in on something like that. So I'm expecting a relatively subdued week here in terms of the trade deadline. What I'm really looking forward to, though, is they are running the gauntlet this week. It's a 3-game road trip. It started in Anaheim. That almost felt like the freebie on the bingo card, Rod. In Los Angeles tomorrow night, in Vegas on Thursday, home to Winnipeg Saturday, and Colorado the following Wednesday. Those are the next 4 for the Vancouver Canucks. So they've got their work cut out for them in terms of what they've got coming down the pipe on the schedule here.
Wonderful recap there, but my mind stopped on Lindholm's been underwhelming, to say the least, if I have that right. Can you walk that back a little bit? Because his first game came out house on fire at Carolina. I've scored twice, right? Has cooled off, obviously, since, but he was an NHL All-Star, the lone Flames rep. What do we expect from him? Because you're right, they gave up a lot to get him, a lot.
Yeah, so he scored twice in his debut. He scored twice in a home game against Detroit. Those are the only games that he has scored. Now, he's not a huge goal scorer, and certainly they've got other guys that can put the puck in the net, so they were bringing him in for his 200-foot game. They were bringing him in for face-off, utility, penalty killing, and he's done some of those things, but the thought was that you were going to have Elias and Elias play together, Pettersson and Lindholm, and they tried that, and there just really wasn't any sort of spark. So they have moved him around. He played a little bit with JT Miller at times. And now, as I said, they've dropped him down to his own line as a third-line center with Pettersson and Miller ahead of him down the middle. Now, those are 3 pretty good centermen, and obviously to have any success in the playoffs, you have to have some depth down the middle. But it really has just been this ongoing battle, 14 games since the All-Star break, to kind of find the right fit for him. He started on the first unit power play, scored a couple of power play goals. That debut that you mentioned in Carolina, he's now off the first unit power play and is part of a second unit that doesn't see a lot of ice time and hasn't been very productive as well. So, look, Jim Rutherford's history over time, you go back to Carolina winning the Cup in 2006, they got Doug Weight in January and then made another deal, got Mark Recchi closer to the deadline. But the thought with Doug Weight was get him early, don't pay those deadline prices, and give a guy a good long leash to sort of find his footing and to acclimate himself. The other thing with Lindholm, and these aren't excuses, but they are some reasons. He learned of his trade at 30,000 feet. He was flying home from Cabo to Calgary to pack a bag to go to the All-Star weekend in Toronto. Then he gets dealt, so his life gets turned upside down. Out of the All-Star break, a 5-game road trip. The Canucks came home for 2, and then we're back out on the road for 3 more. So 8 of his first 10 were on the road. I don't think he had a chance really to collect his breath. And so they have a 9-game homestand starting on Saturday against Winnipeg. They're at home the entire month of March. They've played more hockey than anybody. And the hope is, as some of these other teams are scrambling to close the gap, that their schedules are tougher in terms of condensed games over a short period of time. Well, the Canucks aren't going to have to pack up a suitcase for the entire month of March. And so we'll see how things play out there. But I'm sure a guy like Elias Lindholm certainly would look forward to a 9-game homestand just to let life sort of catch up to him and settle things down a little bit.
I know, JP, your elbows, eyeballs deep in Canucks, but you know Jacob Markstrom well from his time there. And I'm just wondering, the view over the Rockies of yours. What's your take on what's gone on there in the last week or two with Jacob Markstrom?
Yeah, I mean, he's always been an outspoken guy who's not afraid to speak his mind. And so when I saw him making the comments about not liking the way that this matter has been handled, wasn't surprised. You think he and Chris Tanev have been together here in Vancouver and then in Calgary, better part of a decade now. So it's got to be tough to see a guy like that peeled away. Certainly all the uncertainty around Noah Hannafin. And yet, to the Flames' credit, through it all this noise, they're finding ways to win hockey games and stay within an arm's reach. Now, I don't think that they're going to ultimately make up the ground they need to make up to make the playoffs, but it's going to be a fascinating week there. I mean, I think they still remain one of the teams to really watch, not even just the Hannafin situation, but there are other pieces that they could decide to move as well. So it's got to be difficult. He signed with Calgary with the hopes and ideas that it didn't work in terms of playoff success in Vancouver, and you think back to where the Flames were a couple of years ago with one of the best lines in hockey, and obviously Tkachuk is gone, Goudreau's gone, now Lindholm is gone. It just hasn't worked the way that he had hoped when he signed that big ticket. So there are teams out there that need goaltending. I'm not surprised that they're knocking on the Flames' door, and we'll see if, in fact, he is among those that's jettisoned here before the deadline. But I always had a ton of time for Jacob Markstrom. Just an honest, straight shooter and a guy that has done a nice job wherever he's gone since he's become a starter in the National Hockey League. So if there is a team, and New Jersey still seems like they may be that team, if there's a team that makes a move for Markstrom, they're getting a quality person and a really good goaltender.
Sometimes being an honest, straight shooter is tough. But I don't think Jacob Markstrom is going to change now. Hey, just lastly, we got about 90 seconds. Can you take a swing at this? Which of Toronto, Edmonton, Vancouver, Winnipeg is Canada's best chance at ending the drought? Unbiased speaking.
Yeah, look, the Oilers have been a fascinating study since they've found their footing. And they've still got games in hand on the Canucks to make up ground, but they're one of those teams that has a tough schedule. They're out on an Eastern road trip starting tomorrow in Boston. They have a separate Eastern road trip. They got to go back to Toronto and Ottawa, and then I think that trip wraps up in Winnipeg later in the month. So they've got the games in hand, but those only matter if you win some of them or most of them, and we'll see how they fare. They're ahead of the Canucks in terms of that battle-tested, losing in the playoffs and gaining that experience. They've made moves to shore up some of their areas of weakness. It looks like they've got goaltending, although I think we said that about them down the stretch last year as well. So I like a lot of what the Oilers have done here. I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see how the dust settles in the Pacific Division and who avoids that 1-2 matchup, because we're looking probably at Edmonton-Vegas or Vancouver-Vegas, possibly Vancouver-Edmonton in the first round. I don't think that the Leafs, just to bring them into the conversation here, I don't think they represent Canada's best hope, just with the path through the playoffs and the teams that they'd have to face. Winnipeg's interesting to me. When you got Connor Hellebuck doing what he does, he gives them a chance every night out. And like the Pacific Division, avoiding that 2-3 matchup in the West, in the Central, I mean, you could have Colorado-Dallas, you could have Colorado-Winnipeg in the first round. Like, those are series that should stand up later in the playoffs, but with this system and the way that the format, you get some of these matchups in round number one, and you're going to see that in both the Pacific Division and the Central. And so, for a team like Vancouver, if they can stay atop the Pacific and avoid that 2-3 matchup, maybe that gives them a little bit of a leg up to get on a deeper playoff run.
I love your updates. Thank you, Jeff. Enjoy the hockey and the run. Chat with you soon.
Thanks, Ruddy.
Jeff Paterson from Paterson Price and RinkWide Vancouver.